we're going to be making some amazing homemade bagels. I don't know if you've ever made homemade bagels before, but it is so much better than store-bought. It's got that chewy consistency and it's soft. I'm also going to be sharing with you how I make my cinnamon crunch bagels, which are so good with strawberry cream cheese. Let's go ahead and get started making our bagel dough. I'm going to add in some water to a bowl here, a microwavable safe bowl. And I'm also going to add in some sugar. I'm using cane sugar, but you can use granulated sugar. We're going to need 1.5 cups of water and 1/4 cup of sugar. I'm going to have all the amounts listed below in the description box. We're going to pop that in the microwave for about 45 seconds to heat up that water. And then we're going to stir it until that sugar is mostly dissolved. And now after that is mixed in, you want to make sure and feel your water to make sure it is not too hot. 45 seconds in the microwave is usually a perfect amount for me. I'm adding in my yeast. You can use 1 packet of yeast or about 2¼ teaspoons of yeast, and I'm going to mix that in. We're just going to wait for our yeast to bloom, and this is a beautiful part to me, and I usually call my daughter over to watch the blooming process. And now for our dry ingredients. I'm going to be adding some bread flour to my mixing bowl here. Now if you don't have bread flour, you can of course just use regular all-purpose flour. However, bread flour does have a more higher gluten, so it's going to give you a more chewier bagel. It's going to give you a better bagel, but if you don't have that, then just go ahead and use regular all-purpose flour and you'll be fine. To that, I'm going to add in 1 teaspoon of salt. And we want to mix together that salt and that flour really well before we add in the rest of our ingredients, because you definitely don't want one area with a big bite of salt in it. So take some time and really get it mixed well. I'm going to make a well in the center of my bowl, and I'm going to add in my water, my yeast, and my sugar mixture. And you can see how beautiful and puffed up and frothy my yeast have become. Get that all out of my bowl. And to that, I'm going to add in some melted butter. You're going to need 4 tablespoons of melted butter. So I'm using my mixer with my dough hook to mix this on medium-low speed. Now, of course, you can do this by hand. However, it is going to need about 7 to 10 minutes of kneading on my mixer alone. So if you are doing this by hand, it's going to take probably close to about 15 minutes of kneading, because you really want to work with that gluten. So on my stand mixer here, I'm going to get it go on medium-low speed for 7 to 10 minutes. I will check on it about 7 minutes or so. The dough will come together beautifully, and you just want it to be nice and smooth. So this has been about 7 to 8 minutes here. I'm going to go ahead and take my mixer off. I can start to see my dough. It's really nice and soft and smooth, but it's kind of splitting, so I'm going to take it off. And I'm going to brush this with some oil. You can of course just spray this liberally with nonstick cooking spray, but I'm going to be using some coconut oil. This is refined coconut oil, so there is not much flavor to it, or you can use some kind of flavorless oil like avocado oil or vegetable oil. First, I'm going to brush the sides of my bowl to make sure, because this will rise and we don't want anything to stick. Then I'm going to use about a tablespoon of oil to really brush and coat the entire bit of my dough. We want to make sure this dough is really nice and coated in the oil, so nothing sticks, and it's going to help us when we want to form this into little dough balls later on. So I used about a tablespoon of oil, tossed my dough all around in it to make sure all of it is coated. I'm going to cover this with a a towel here and I'm going to place it in a warm area till it's doubled in size. While that is resting, I'm going to make my little cinnamon sugar mixture for my cinnamon crunch bagels. Because when these bake, it has this crunchy outer layer, and that's why I call them my cinnamon crunch bagels. So in a bowl here, I have some brown sugar, granulated sugar, and cinnamon that I've added and mixed in. I also showed there that I will be making some Everything Bagel as well, so I have that Everything Bagel seasoning. You can find that at most grocery stores now. I'm mixing together my equal parts brown sugar, granulated sugar, and a pinch of cinnamon. I will have everything down below for you. So I let this go for way more than double in size, clearly. But that is what it's like when you have little ones running around. The dough ended up sitting for a long time, but that's okay. It's perfect. So I punched my dough down and flattened it down, and I'm going to get this out here. Now I'm going to form this kind of into a log and just roll it around, roll it into itself into a log. Now you can make your bagels as big or as small as you want. This is going to be completely up to you. This will work perfectly for 8 normal sized bagels, 6 jumbo bagels, or maybe 10 smaller mini bagels. So I'm going to take one piece here that I've just separated my dough into pieces. I'm going to take all the ends and tuck it into itself in the center, kind of like I'm making a dinner roll. I'm going to use my thumb to bring it all in, just to squeeze the bottom, and then I'm going to roll it on the counter just to seal it as best as I can. You can turn it around to make sure that it is really nice and sealed, and just pinch and seal it if you need to. That oil that you brushed on it earlier will also help you at this stage, make it a nice, easy dough to work with. Place your finger into the center of the dough, and I'm going to start just rolling it around in circles. Once my finger's all the way through, I'm going to use both of my fingers and just kind of spin it as a wheel, but I'm letting gravity do most of the work. You don't really want to pull and stretch your bagel, just kind of like let gravity do the work, but you do want your bagel to be about 3 inches in diameter. You want that center part to be about 3 inches because they will shrink when you boil them and bake them. I'm just showing you again here how I'm taking all the corners and I'm turning it into itself just to form it into a ball and then sealing the back. I will roll that onto the counter just to make sure that it is nice and sealed. Place a hole into the center of my dough as best as I can. Go all the way through. Then I'm going to start just letting gravity work with the dough while I turn it like a wheel. You want the center of your bagel to be about 3 inches in diameter again because they will shrink as we boil them and bake them. So these are going to have to sit and rest for about 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to cover this with a damp towel. You want to make sure your towel is damp so they don't dry out. And get a large pot, or depends on the size of bagels you're making, of course. But you want a pot with about 6 to 8 cups of water in it or so. After that has come up to a slow boil, you're going to want to add in 1 tablespoon of baking soda. Just give that a stir around. And then we're going to place our bagels in. You can do 1 or 2 at a time depending on how much you want to do and how much space that you have. But you want your water to be at a slow boil. You may not be able to see all of the bubbles in my pot right now, but my water is at a slow boil. We're going to boil each side for 1 minute. I'm going to flip it, do the next side for 1 minute. So 2 minutes in total. I am using a knife to help me and a slotted spoon. As soon as these come out of the water, you're going to place them on a parchment-lined baking tray, and you're going to sprinkle whatever kind of toppings that you want. I'm doing some with my Everything Bagel seasoning and my cinnamon crunch seasoning. Not seasoning, my cinnamon sugar crunch. We're going to boil one side for 1 minute. I'm using a knife, a butter knife that has no sharp edges really, to help me flip it, as well as a slotted spoon. and that they're homemade. And I think that's a beauty of anything homemade. It does not have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to look like a factory made it. So that's just how I see it. Before I place it onto my parchment, I flip it one more time just to get the smoothest side up. Strain off as much of that liquid as possible before placing it on your parchment. All right, for my next bagels I'm going to show you here is my cinnamon crunch bagels. I'm going to take that sugar mixture that we made, the cinnamon and the sugar. I'm going to take some of that and sprinkle it carefully on the top of my bagel and then just rub it into the bagel. You want a nice generous amount, but you want to be careful that they don't go too much on the sides or the bottom of the bagel because they will start to melt at the bottom of the bagel. And you don't really want that. It's going to be perfectly fine once we toast it and everything towards the end. But this is going to create a layer, a crunchy, sugary layer on top. And again, just be careful not to get too much on the bottom of your bagel. I'm doing another one with my Everything Bagel seasoning. And these are going to bake for about 25 minutes at 425 degrees. And as you can see, they're out of the oven. They are beautiful. You're going to want to wait for them to cool before handling it. And I highly recommend cooling these on like a cooling rack or something, so all sides of the bagel can get cooled, because as they're sitting on that parchment paper, the bottom will not be as crispy as the top, but it's going to be perfectly delicious either way. Wait for them to cool, store them in a Ziploc bag or a container or something. But as you can see, they are soft bagels, which is so good. And if you have not tried strawberry cream cheese, you need to try these cinnamon crunch bagels with strawberry cream cheese, because my goodness, it is so good. It is a dessert. We have it as a dessert, let's be real, not breakfast. They are so delicious. Yes, we do have them for breakfast. We do slice them in half and toast them, and they get crunchy on the outside and even on the inside, and we smear some cream cheese on it. For the Everything Bagel seasoning, we use just regular cream cheese, and you can see how inside these bagels are so fluffy and chewy, and they are so delicious. And it's actually just a handful of ingredients and so easy to make. But on our cinnamon crunch bagels, I love to use the strawberry cream cheese that I believe Philadelphia cream cheese makes. I believe that's what the brand is. But they are perfectly delicious. They're soft and fluffy. Again, really honestly give it a try. If you've never made homemade bagels before, they are worth it. It's really not that hard to make at all. And you know what's going in them. No preservatives, nothing like that. It's just good ingredients, and it's amazingly delicious. I hope that you try it. I will have all the amounts listed below for you, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.